We've just finished our ABC town hall, the president and the people. We are still in the room. The president has just left. We are going to get the reaction from the people that were in the room. I'm here with Lanae McNeil of Undefeated, and we're going to get some reaction. How are you? Thank you so much for coming. I'd like your reaction to what just happened here.
And what happened?
It was amazing. It was powerful. People were listening to one another, and I think the president came up with a lot of great solutions, being on both sides of the coin as being a police officer and also being an African-American mother. It was amazing. It was really, really amazing to see all these people in one room together.
Now, if I remember, you did a viral video.
Yes, ma'am.
You're a police officer. You're out of Ohio.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were reprimanding some of your fellow officers about not putting on that uniform if they were not comfortable in African-American communities. What was your takeaway today?
I just feel like, I guess in listening to the president, I just feel like when he kept saying accountability to the community, and I just feel like now it makes me feel like let's go back to our fellow police departments and make sure we hold each other accountable. If one of my counterparts see me doing something, I feel like you're close enough to be my sister and brother in blue, you should hold me accountable. I think if we start holding each other accountable and the community starts holding themselves accountable, if you know somebody's in the community is doing something they have no business doing, tell us. Hey, listen, this is a problem right here. We need you to handle it. If I see one of my fellow officers doing something that's out of line, I should be able to step in and say, hey, this is out of line. I think that's how we'll start to mend the gap between all of us. And I think that's what he was saying.
And what are people in the African-American community saying to you since seeing the video? What were they saying to you here? I saw you in tears and embracing people. What kind of community did you
I'm sorry.
No.
Just to hear a lot of them say that they hated the police and how they didn't want to deal with us, they didn't trust us, and to hear them say, you made us want to trust you guys again. You stood up, you said something. It was just real overwhelming. It was extremely overwhelming, especially for a mother that had or a son that had just lost his dad, to say, I still trust the police, and I know it's some good police officers. That's all I wanted to do was bridge that gap and say, listen, all of us are not bad. 95% of us are good officers, and you're always going to have that certain percentage that's not right. But to hear him say, I know there's good officers.
And that was Alton Sterling?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Will you do anything differently when you get back to Ohio and you put that uniform on?
Yes, you know what? My compassion level has changed drastically, because I feel like for me to ask for change, I have to be that change. I have to lead by example, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to lead by example. I feel like in my community, they know what kind of officer I am. I want to even be better.
Thank you.
You might need to make some more videos.
Thank you. So, you're another police officer. The president talked a lot about how we ask too much of police officers and that your job is so very difficult and that there is fear on both sides of the badge.
Right.
You're fearful and the community is fearful.
Right.
What was your takeaway?
My takeaway from today, I'm very glad that we were able to come together today and even start the conversation. My fear today was that not enough was heard from us. None of us got to speak today, and I'm also the wife of a murdered police officer.
I'm so sorry.
And we have a lot to say, and the general takeaway from a lot of this is there's just so much hate, and there doesn't need to be all this hate. And we go to work every day wanting to do good, not wanting to shoot people, not wanting to harass people of the opposite color. And I mean, in my community, it's Hispanic community.
Mm-hmm.
And
where are you in office?
I'm a deputy sheriff in Bernalillo County in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And we really want to do good. And I'm asking the last gentleman that spoke about asking the president and asking the public in general, please give us some time to let the facts come out. There's so much judgment placed on a 5-second video of things that the general public is not educated about, and we want to help educate you in those things and help you understand why we do what we do as far as use of force, and expand on all of those things, and help you know why we react a certain way, and come into a simulation scenario with us and go into the situation where you're forced to shoot, don't shoot, or roll around with somebody who's threatening to kill you. And my partner was almost killed in an altercation with a male, and she survived. But just because she survived doesn't mean that it's any less valuable than someone who didn't survive. We're in a lot of danger, but we also want to do good. And I don't want to get into a fight with somebody if I don't have to. I don't want to have to pull the trigger on someone if I don't have to, because it's detrimental to us too. And I'm just asking that we get the benefit of the doubt to at least just try to understand what we do, and have a conversation about those topics.
The president talked about data, though, and there is all this evidence, these numbers, this data going back for years and generations about the discrepancies in policing. And so do you think officers who want to come to work every day,
has this robbed her of her childhood?
Or, who are we at war with? Are we at war against, radical jihadists, radical Islam? Who are we at war against?
We're at war against radical jihadists who use Islam to recruit and radicalize others in order to pursue their evil agenda. It's not so important what we call these people as to what we do.
Demographically are going to be lower socioeconomic status. It's just going to be where your crime comes from, and that's going to drive the use of force. It's going to drive a lot of things. It doesn't mean that we go to work every day to do harm. The president did mention something that I did like what he said, that you take all these problems in lower status communities where there is a lot of mental health issues, there's a lot of poverty and things, and then you throw it to us and say, here, go handle it. But then when we try to handle it, we're questioned for it, and it's a very fine line. It is the thin blue line that we walk between chaos and order, and it's a very tough job. And I just ask that people be a little bit more tolerant and understanding of just what we do. Be open-minded and maybe empathetic to it. My request.
What was your takeaway?
Well, I got basically what I expected. I've been in law enforcement for 32 years. But one of the things that I got from the president's talk was that we have to hurry up and listen. There are a lot of sides of this. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of components. And this is not a simple thing. It's a complicated set of issues. But the fact that we're listening, I think, is a definite step in the right direction. I was with the Miami Police Department for 32 years, and for the last month and a half, I've been the new Ferguson police chief. And, of course, Ferguson came up quite a bit in that conversation. But, even more important than this whole town hall gathering, I actually got to meet some people from Ferguson.
Yes.
And actually have a conversation with them. And I think that's all a part of the process of moving forward. The fact that we're listening to each other, the fact that we got to know each other and we didn't know each other, I think that bodes well for the future.
Chief, do you think there's an appetite for the kind of structural change that spills out beyond this room, that goes to some of the lack of investment, some of the things that then you guys are asked to take care of that the president talked about? Is there a will for that? Is there a feeling that the rest of the country can get behind these kinds of things that make for structural changes?
Well, I think the truth is that we all want the same things. I think we want better communities. We want safer schools. We want schools that invest in our children. I think that the difference is that when there's a limited part of the pie, we're sort of pitted against each other to get those things. And I think those things spill out into issues that become police issues. But I think the president was very dead on when he said that a lot of these things have to be taken care of long before they become police issues. Crime doesn't happen because people want to be criminals. Crime happens because there's poverty, and there often isn't a choice. And so these are things that need to be dealt with long before they become police issues. Mental health challenges, if we invest in that a lot more, police won't be tasked with dealing with the person who has not gotten the treatment that they've needed for a long, long time, and everyone in the neighborhood knew it, and the police were only called when it boiled over into a situation that put us in a situation where we couldn't win.
Well, you have a lot of work cut out for you in Ferguson. Good luck with that. I want to bring you into the conversation as well. What was your takeaway?
I mean, it was good that we're having a talk, continuing to have these talks to bring people together to hopefully bridge this gap. I appreciate how honest the president really was, and being the commander-in-chief, I know, he's not the president of white America, he's not the president of black America, he's the president of America. But he was very honest. I mean, he said some things that I'm sure made folks uncomfortable, but it needed to be addressed, like the police chief talked about. The reason we do have high crime is because in some neighborhoods we also have high poverty, right? We're not giving these communities the mental health they need. We're not giving these communities the economic support that they need. I think it was a really good conversation that needs to happen and continue to happen. But as a young person, I always want to know what's the action piece behind it, right? We have the conversation. We know the statistics. We didn't even hear from the president. What's next? What are we going to make change? I mean, for us young people, we're going to keep pounding the ground, continuing to organize, continuing to get involved politically. I'm even running for office myself because we understand that it has to change through policy, right? It has to change through legislation. And like the president said, he said something that's really important. It does start on a local level, which is frustrating because it would be great if we can get a universal law that would actually help people who have been disinvested, but it starts on a local level. It takes a little longer, but we wish we could see change.
You're running for office. I'm here with a gel pen and a sign.
Now, the president also talked a lot about hope, and he said that he was Mr. Hope. Are you hopeful after listening to what the president had to say?
So I'm hopeful for many reasons. I'm hopeful also today because me and the president obviously heard each other in the end, in which we agreed that poverty is violence, right? And that it's more than just people making bad decisions. I'm also hopeful because of the young people in the streets protesting for justice, because there are many people, many young leaders in this movement. I and Rasheen are just two of those thousands. But what I would like us to understand is that this is more than just a thing about bad apples, good apples, right? We have to understand that there is a deep legacy of race and slavery that we have not overcome yet and that we have not dealt with yet, and that ties directly into policing and how black and brown communities feel they are aggressively being policed. And we have to look at that, right? And we have to get to the root of that problem.
And there's some work to be done. Thank you so much. Pastor Pickney's wife and two beautiful daughters. You heard the president talk for over an hour and a half, about the issues that are going on in our communities, about race and policing. What was your takeaway? Your family has been tragically affected by gun violence.
Clemente, he was a man of peace. He was a man of love. He saw no strangers. It was about introducing you to God, wanting you to he wouldn't turn anyone away. And being that this is a Bible study, he invited someone in that didn't look like him. And his main concern was, you're here for the Lord. You're here to learn about the Lord. There's so much that's going on out there. A lot of mass shootings, a lot of individual shootings. But I think we have to put God first. This has been very difficult for my family, for the rest of the Emanuel 9, for the rest of the other families, the other 8 families, the survivors, and so forth. But I think in every case, every incident out there, there has to be, you have to put the love in it. You have to put God in it. And you have to have the peace. And because my husband was about peace, and that's what he taught, and that's what he preached, and we instilled that in our daughters, that when all of this happened, that's why Charleston And South Carolina was such a peaceful state.
A much different reaction there.
It's a very different reaction. That was the kind of person that Clemente was. And so, you know, we as parents, we instill love in our children. We instill, you know, you don't hate, you don't see color. You know, everyone's not going to look like you and act like you and so forth. And I think that we have to start teaching our kids that, and we just have to come to that understanding that, you know, we've got to come together. We cannot be separated.
Do you think there's finally an appetite for that? We've been at nodal points in this country before where we've had these convulsions, and then afterwards people are talking and there's talk of reconciliation. But in this way, you know, with so many things happening and spilling out, you know, it's a time for folks to maybe go harder. And do you think there's the appetite to really dig in and excavate the way that we need to bring about the peace that you were talking about?
You got to start somewhere. And we really need to work harder at it to bring about the peace. Are some people ready for it? No, some people are not. But, I mean, with everything, with the gun control legislation that's out there, with everything that's out there, you got to start somewhere.
Very quickly, we're running out of time. You had questions for the president.
Yes. I have lots of friends that come from all different races and all different backgrounds of life. And my parents raised me around love and several things that I use in my daily life and my friends have. And I want to know how we can continue to spread that feeling to the rest of the people in America, and how people can learn to love and care about other people no matter what they look like or how they act.
The second question is, how are you going to show these citizens how to act? What can you do and what can we do?
So from the mouth of babes, those are the most important questions. Our children need to talk about race, they need to talk about love, they need to talk about compassion, and it's up to the next generation to make it happen. So thank you so much for joining our After the Town Hall. On behalf of myself and Lonnie,